Hi, Julie.
Oh, sorry. I don't know where everybody is. How are you?
Good, how are you? My
Good.
video isn't working for some reason.
Oh, lucky.
Yay, yay. The town issued laptop is failing me.
Oh, no. Does that surprise you?
No. I
Hi,
even
Paul.
put lipstick on. Come on.
That's weird because I can see your name.
I know. And when I click on start video, it just shows a blank screen.
It just shows blank. Yeah, I can see the blank. It's not
Yeah.
off, is it? There's a little the little knob off.
You
There.
know why? I had it taped.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not paranoid or anything. But I am. You hear these crazy stories, that's the thing.
Absolutely. Doesn't hurt to have it off. Mine has a little like thing that goes back and forth, that I have a separate camera for this computer.
I'm technically challenged, so I try to take every precaution I can.
We all are. I think there's no way to keep up with it.
I know, that's a crazy thing. How were your holidays?
Happy holidays. Did you have a nice holiday?
Yes.
Good.
Yes. Sad it's over, but
Me too.
all of a
It seemed
sudden.
like a good long time, which I think just made it harder to go back.
I know it was nice.
Hi, sorry to be running a minute late. Did somebody already take control as the owner? Because I got the message about it being recorded already. So, but I think I still need to log in to take ownership.
Yeah, you may need to.
I usually try to log on a few minutes early, but I apologize, just wasn't in the cards today. So just let me pull up the email from Sherry. Here we go. Participants, claim host. Secret number. All right. Closed captioning turned on. All right. And Julie and Judy are here. So we'll just wait another minute. Hello to our public participants. We're just waiting. We have one more subcommittee member that we're hoping will join us.
Good evening and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Hello.
Hi, Bronwyn.
Hi.
Did Myra say she was coming on?
She didn't say she wasn't. She accepted the invite originally, and she didn't say anything yesterday when I sent out the reminder. Yeah, somebody has a way of reaching
Neither
out.
did I. I meant to all day today, and then I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Maybe just called me. Let's see.
Oh, you know, she had a question mark for the invite. So, but yeah, if you.
Let me see. If not, I think 2 or 3 of us make a quorum, so it's fine. Not that we're voting on it.
All right, let me just get my notes file started here. Apologies to our public participants, just taking me a minute to get set up here with these subcommittee meetings. The chair also gets to be the note taker, etc. So I am always multitasking, running a minute behind here. So, okay, following our agenda, and I can pull up the agenda, but it was fairly simple. So the first item was call to order. I'll just, oh, I can't paste it in the chat. with these meetings, so never mind. But if you don't, I did forward it around to the subcommittee members, so if you need me to forward
And it should be on the
again,
website if people need it too, right?
yeah. So we did not have a meeting last month, so nothing to discuss from the minutes from there. Our next item of business would be public engagement. Paul, Bronwyn, I don't know if either you wanted to start or if you had coordinated comments. Oh, then.
Paul, if Paul's ready, he can go ahead.
Well, good evening. I appreciate it. I just wanted to follow up on, I've addressed the committee twice before. The first time, it was the wrong meeting. It was a recycling meeting. So I then came and talked to the land use committee, and everything was asked to be put in writing, which I followed up on the 14th of November and submitted to the task force my email explaining all the reasons why I thought the land use subcommittee should take a strong stand on such a valuable piece of property that's going to be developed forever. So I was trying to find out, basically, if you look at the big picture, the charter that I see for you guys is the guiding principles are exactly what we're needing right now. And it says to protect habitat, functioning ecosystems that provide critical services to the suburban environment, minimize the release of toxins, carbon, and other pollutants. So I wanted to make you aware that I met with Rebecca Davis and have shared a lot of documentation with her recently. One thing to point out from a land use situation, the blasting is going to be so extensive because they're lowering the hill by 34 feet and there's a lot of bedrock. I did share a study that I want to follow up and send to you people, so you'll have your eyes open also. And it is from the American Chemical Society publication called Environmental Science and Technology. And what it does is it talks about the wells being polluted in Windham, New Hampshire, and how they conclusively proved how fracturing the bedrock with explosive does that. So it says in the article that up to 6% of all the explosives leach into the environment unexploded. They oxidize, they blast in the wrong direction and just are persistent for 12 to 24 months beyond. So the amount of explosives there is so staggering also that it's really something that I wanted to make you folks aware and ask and beg you as a land use committee to make some kind of statement or do whatever you can to try to save this pristine oak hillside that the superintendent of schools calls ledge with some tree roots, you know?
Thank you, Paul, for those comments. You alluded at the start of your comments to having provided some written feedback. I don't think this group asked for written feedback, and I certainly haven't seen it as the subcommittee chair. I think I remember that you were briefly at our subcommittee meeting, but you also joined the larger sustainability committee meeting, but also what you talked about with the remit of the group is not ringing familiar to me with for our group. So I'm wondering if you had spoken with another group other than this group.
I've spoken to both. There was two committees. There was the recycling and a land use.
Right.
It was November 10th. I have the email in front of me that I forwarded on the 10th. Land use subcommittee key points. And I had 3 attachments. So no problem. I will forward the documentation to what is the correct email get to you.
Paul, I actually have it. I apologize. Somehow it looks like it was forwarded to me and maybe not to all committee members. So I can just forward it to them right now to save you a step.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Been very diligent in putting this information down, and we do appreciate it. So Sean and I will send it to both of you right now.
Oh, okay, yeah. So apologies, Paul, that we didn't see that. That was obviously just had been forwarded to Julie rather than to all of us. And it's just the vagaries of us being a volunteer board and not all having access to the town emails. So I think that's why they sent it to Julie.
Oh, okay. So I did send it to ESC.
Yes, you did. I see that ESC, and then I don't know who's. I'm gonna follow up. I don't know who's checking ESC. It's either probably somebody at the
Yeah.
town level,
Oh.
or our chair of the whole thing, and maybe just assume that. So,
I
Judy
just
asked.
really want to share with you the American Chemical Society. Just
Yeah.
just read the opening paragraph and it'll blow your mind that up to 6% of the ammonia nitrate in the diesel fuel is going to persist in the environment. It varies on a lot of variables, but it does clearly document, and the scope here is just so mind-boggling that the presentation that was given by the school to the selectmen, I thought, was completely just out in left field. To say that there's not enough room when they have 30 acres developed to put a 3-acre school and go ahead and say that's okay, especially when the feasibility study said, you know, don't even look on the hill. So nobody has made the compelling case of why the forest needs to be cut down, why we have to have the school kids listening to blasting for months at a time, which is going to trigger other issues emotionally, academically, socially. It's only what, 150 yards to the hill, maybe 200 yards. It's not a half mile away. So, and then they're going to have 2 rock crushing operations there. It's going to be a fiasco that we have an opportunity to save 15 acres of forest, and they can still have a better school. If I could conclude with my safety kick, okay, safety is truly the #1 thing for the students, I believe. That's why I said we needed a sidewalk when they didn't present a sidewalk. Now they're going to put a sidewalk. What about Hemlock? Is there any thought of, okay, putting a sidewalk there? No discussion. What about having less cliffs? Right now, the plan is there's over 600 feet of cliffs that are going to be made because they're lowering the ground level. So you got all these cliffs, you have a boardwalk that's elevated that they've already told me will not be an issue because they have a maintenance staff that will keep it up, but it's 700 feet. There's going to be frost, there's going to be slush. Even the maintenance people are going to get hurt. They're going to slip on it, you know, and to go ahead and do this fiasco when it's so much extra money to damage the environment and wind up with a subpar school, the safety of the kids. They said the stairs are not inherently more dangerous. They even wrote back saying that they're used to walking up to the athletic fields now. Not really. There's a little bit of elevation change today between the school and the athletic fields, but it's not the same. It's up to 70 feet with the new school. That's a completely disconnected campus where there's nothing, okay, that can convince me that people aren't going to get hurt. People are going to fall in the steps monthly. People are going to fall off of the cliffs. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. I hope I'm wrong. But to build a situation where you are absolutely destroying the environment to ask them, I'm talking 5,000 or 10,000 truckloads are going to come out because the geotech report states that the forest products, the forest mat, the subfloor, the soil, none of it can be used on site, nothing. They have to remove everything except the rock that they're going to crush. And they have so much of a surplus of rock that they're going to be taking truckload after truckload after truckload after truckload. And they're going to wind up with a school that has 100 steps to go in the front door of a 5-story building that has 2 elevators for 1,600 students. I think the handicapped kids will be fine, but I think the students for the next 50, 75, 100 years are going to have a compromised school that has north-facing stairs. That is not a smart move. There's been so many architects stop by and talk to the people who are trying to support the alternate site. They all say the same thing. It's not logical. It is, and then to be just completely unprofessional for the superintendent to come out and say, we don't care about the trees, we just don't want minorities on our trails, was disgusting in the Boston.com. But I'm here to say, you guys are the land use subcommittee. Is that correct? Is this the ESC land use subcommittee meeting?
Yes, it is, Paul, and I appreciate your comment. And I also know that you did give comments to the larger Environmental Sustainability Committee, and I appreciate that. It's maybe a little unsatisfying that you give the comments. I assure you that after you left, that we did have a discussion, and we've been trying to educate ourselves more on this. But I do also want to clarify, just so that there's no misunderstanding, the ESC is a volunteer committee. It doesn't have a regulatory or approval function. It's basically what can we do outside of, basically through our volunteer efforts to promote sustainability. So, we don't have.
And I totally get that. I know you're not regulatory, you don't have permits and stuff, but you're an influential town body that has as the guiding core principles is absolutely relevant to what's going on here. And if there's not a case, if I'm really out in left field, I don't mind, you can tell me that, but I can assure you that it is very possible. We know that they could fit the school down below. They didn't want to mess with the athletic fields. Now they're going to have a retention pond that's going to be down on the softball, baseball field. So, the situation is your guiding principles are supposed to be to minimize release of toxins, protect habitat and functioning ecosystems. That's exactly what we're talking about here. And they went ahead, the school building committee has come back at our discussion points, and they've done a few nice things like an amphibian barrier they're trying to put in and do a little bit of nice stuff here and there. But the reality is it's still ludicrous to blow up the hill for a subpar school with 100 steps to get in the front door, when even the Boston Globe is reporting that it's going to be built on the athletic fields. Nobody's been upfront, honest, and complete disclosure. So, please read what I send. Thank you for listening. And I know that you don't have the ability other than to, make a statement or an email. And I really value your allowing me to speak, but I see it as a complete Zoom is what it's all about. If there wasn't COVID, okay, and the people on the school building committee did not walk the site, we know multiple people on the school building committee, they didn't walk the site. And then when we asked how many of them walked the site, we were attacked. We were actually told that they bought a 4-wheel drive truck and this and that, and that some of them are elderly. That's not relevant. Walking the site on a $300 million project is something that should have been done by every member of the committee. And we shouldn't have all this shady stuff going on here where we're going to wind up destroying the environment and having a subpar school where kids are absolutely going to get hurt on the steps routinely.
Got it. Thank you, Paul. And again, I realize it's maybe not the most satisfying thing to give your comments here, and then we don't have a lot to say, but I do assure you that when you did give comments to the ESC about a month and a half ago, I know we did have a in-depth discussion after that, and there's something that we'll continue discussing. I know there are 2 other public participants, so I want to make sure they have a chance to be heard. Judy, not to put you on the spot, I just don't know if you had anything in terms of your perspective of your work supporting CONCOM and your eyes on other parts of this before.
I agree with what Paul is saying, and he voiced similar concerns at the conservation meeting last night. And I think they have retained 2 peer review consultants, which I think has been very valuable in the process. And they share some of the same concerns. I mean, I agree, it's going to be devastating to the whole ecosystem. It's adjacent to the area of critical environmental concern. It's a core habitat. And I think, I honestly don't know what the problem is with people not having much of a vested interest in this project. It is gigantic, it's consequential, and there's no one doing it. Once there is a building, it's not going to revert back to open space. It's not going to be retreed. And hopefully people will start to get on board. I mean, it's never too late to come to meetings and to voice your opinions, because there's going to be a giant impact, and people are going to be stunned when it starts, especially the extent. It's not going to be just the direct abutters. It's going to be the surrounding area, the town at large. and just what we'll lose. I think that's kind of fallen by the wayside in some of it. Exactly what is going to be lost with this. And I know I'm not opposed to a new school. I mean, certainly needs updating. But I don't agree with the path that they've chosen.
Thanks, Judy. Bronwyn, you were here next. I guessing
Yes,
also comments on the book.
Yes, hello. I thank Paul and Judy for their comments. You know, I agree with much of what they've said. While you are a volunteer group, I agreed with Paul that I think that from my point of view, part of your responsibility is to lead the way for those who care, and for those who don't care. I think a statement from this group, you could make it as non-political and as polite as you like, but I do believe that this group has a responsibility to make some kind of statement about the destruction and unsustainability of this project site. It's important to know, like Paul, is that I support vocational education. I'm a former teacher myself, and I also voted for the funding for the vocational school. However, at the town meeting, there was no visuals. There were no verbal descriptions of the school. The PowerPoint presentation that was supposed to be given was not working. No one I have talked to in any of the 12 sending communities knows anything about what the siting of this school entails. People are shocked to learn that the forest is going to be destroyed needlessly, because as Paul pointed out, their own documentation proves to us that the football field site, which we call C2, is a viable building site for the same number of students. That the enhanced enrollment of 1,600 students actually has the same building size, 368,000 square feet, that the one on the hill, the forested hilltop side has. I've asked the question many times to many different groups and people, but I have not yet received an answer. If we can build our new vocational school for less money, a shorter construction time, much less blasting and disruption to students, staff, and visitors, and of course to the environment, and save a integrated ecosystem, why aren't we doing that? That's the question that no one's been able to answer. Why are we doing that? We all want a new school, but why are we destroying the forest and spending more money than we need to when it's not necessary? This is like a gift, because most of the time there isn't a viable option, that there isn't a solution to the situation except for the usual tweaking and compromising. But this is a wonderful situation because there are 2 other viable building sites right on vocational land. So people are not happy that they're having to spend more money than is necessary and to destroy a forest. As Judy said, this is Wakefield's only forested core habitat that supports some sensitive and endangered species, both plant and animal. This is not sustainable. Julie, I wish that you or someone could come up and tell me the answer to this question.
Yeah, two things, because when they did come in front of the town council, we did ask them that, and I will be the first to say that I think that this process was not a perfect process. COVID, some transparency issues, the unfortunate situation with the town meeting. Their explanation, and I have not dug into this, is that the site, the other site, the C2 site that you refer to, they did not have rights to build a driveway it abuts to private land, it would have had a different means of egress. And I don't know whether that's true or whatever, but that seemed to be quite the barrier in addition to the size. So
It isn't, it
that's
is
the
not
explanation
true.
that I've been given.
It's not true what they said. We have the documentation to prove it. This is the thing that there are, what was said to you at the town council meeting, and you probably read it in the paper because I wrote a very specific documented letter refuting much of what was told. And it was refuted by the building committee's own documentation that anyone can go and look through on the Northeast Metro Tech Building Site Committee webpage. It's all there. There are thousands of documents there, and we have dug through them. It's not our job to do it, but we care enough to have done that. I do have to disagree with one minor point that Paul brought up, is that it's not a nice thing to put an amphibian exclusion barrier up there. And I did question what the research says about how such fencing affects the amphibian population. They did not have an answer for me. My feeling is you don't do something unless you know what effect it's going to have on the amphibian population. I also asked about what research says about the leaching from this fencing, because it's made from supposedly from recycled plastic. They did not have an answer for that. So there's so much I need to say about this. I will be happy to send you an initial letter that I wrote, because it cites the specific documents from which I get my information. But Julie, we need someone to come out. There were only two questions asked at that town council meeting. And it was about how they rated the building sites. And I will send that to you as well. If you look carefully at how they rated the building sites, it has been deliberately skewed for the Hilltop site. There has to be an explanation why they're willing to destroy a core habitat when they can build a new vocational school in less time, with less disruption, less blasting, and less money. There has to be an answer to this question. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Bob, and I should have asked Paul and Bronwyn to just identify themselves as Wakefield residents, but I knew they are. Bob, you want to just identify yourself?
Sure.
And
Sure. Thank you. Bob Brooks, June Circle. I am a butter to this project. This is my first time on your Zoom meeting. I did have some comments. I have been to the town council a couple of times with comments, and I was told they just don't have the teeth to do anything, and I understand that. Some of the comments that well, actually, I'm kind of getting off the point. Let me just address something specifically for your organization here. I looked on the website and I saw how it said that the Environmental Sustainability Committee is protecting and enhancing ecological, economic health, resource conservation for the businesses, residents, ecosystems. Your guiding principles will protect the habitat and functioning ecosystems. I looked further on your site and it had a report in studies archives, which I thought was pretty interesting. In 1992, which was 30 years ago, I guess the organization had a study there of the Saugus River flood control study by Camp Dresser and McKee. It's pretty lengthful. I believe it's 160 some odd pages, and I started looking through it. Although it was done 30 years ago, the project that Northeast is proposing, where they're going to blast the number of trees, comes out to approximately 14 acres. And that 14 acres, I calculated, is actually the equivalent of 609,000 square feet of tree canopy that's going to be gone forever. Aside from that, the proposed blasting is going to have to drain somewhere, and they're proposing to have a retaining pond, a stormwater drain that goes right into the existing softball field, which is as soon as you enter the site. That's going to be a holding system for the on that baseball field. And then eventually it's going to be discharged into the Saugus River. Now, I don't know how many thousands and thousands of gallons are going to be coming out of there and how much it's going to be able to store and clean. But when they did the test site up in that area, there was one, I believe was site number 103, and they drilled it down 10 feet, and it kept bubbling and bubbling and bubbling over for almost a month before they finally capped it. Now, they've stated that they feel that that area is very dry. I cannot believe that area is dry. Maybe from the drought we've had, it may be dry on the top, but there's an excessive amount of water. Now, my residence is on the other side, the south side, and I live the closest at the end of June Circle, and we see the water coming down. There's the wetlands behind us, which is on town-owned property, and the largest wetlands area is wetlands number 1, which comes out to Farm Street. They've already said that they would put excess water into the drainage. Dealing with the Conservation Committee, they says they can make it better, but they can't make it worse. And I feel if they're going to take that much trees down, it's definitely going to go flooded somewhere, and it's going to make it worse. Now, I don't expect you to comment on tonight. If you need more documentation, I will send you documentation on that, and whatever you need. And we can go from there. But if you are the protectors of it, I'd like you to be aware of, what's in the progress. Because as previous Brian said, we've gone through thousands and thousands, and myself over 5,000 pages of documents, engineer reports, the SCOPTech report, and even the value engineering report, which states that they want to do $33.3 million in proposed cuts. That means, they're over budget. So the school is going to be actually a shell of what they think it's going to be. I think one of the issues of this, and they've talked before about it, and it hasn't been brought up for quite a while, they're worried about losing the grant. I talked with Jack McCarthy a couple of months ago. And the reason why I'm talking about this, because it talks about the environment when I had a conversation with him. And I asked him a point blank, will they lose the grant if the site is moved? And he said, I can't give you a yes or no answer, but we can talk on it. So he called me on my phone. We had a discussion for about 20 minutes, and he says there's a lot more to it. Now, looking on all the reports from the MSBA in the past, there's, I believe, 10 or 12 schools that they have worked with the schools. They wouldn't lose the grant. They may have the grant adjusted or the time frame moved back, but they still kept the grant. There's absolutely no reason why they can't do the same thing for Northeast Folk School. As far as the town council meeting, unfortunately, I had about 13 minutes of a prepared speech as Ms. Smith Galvin was there, and I only was allowed 3 minutes, so I could pick and choose pretty quickly. The comments that I made for the 3 minutes, I was kind of disturbed when Superintendent DeBarry got up and he referred to me as the gentleman sitting behind me. He knows who I was, just to give me the courtesy of that, I give him the courtesy. His statements on that about spreading false information is probably the biggest lie I ever heard. I don't do it. I get it from their information. So if they're giving me false information on the website, that's what I'm dealing with. The statement he made, which I thought was pretty interesting, was that he said that there are, out of the project that's going on, there were 5 different projects. Basically, he should have said there were divisions, because a project has divisions. There were 5 divisions that were on budget and on time. And then he said there was 11 out of the 16 are not on budget, and we're going to have to come back to the towns for more money. And the very next statement, he comes back and says, we're on point, we're on schedule, and we don't have to come back for the towns for any more money. Now, I'm not sure what side of his mouth was the truth or which side was false truth. And if anybody doubts it, they could go back and look at the minutes from November 11th of the Town Council 2022 meeting and listen to exactly what he said. I mean, there were some other things that he said that I was very disturbed about, although he didn't bring them up that meeting. Well, Mr. Nicoli was similar to it because he talked about greening the cities, and the greening the cities was a program that goes into the towns, and he thought it was good. He found out about building a tree forest on the side of the land that's too wet to build a school. Now, I looked on the website, and Greening the Cities is a program to save on heating and appliances. And the most important thing they try to save is tree canopy, which is not exactly how he explained it. So, you know, it's this that I'm coming up against all the time. When they had the town vote at the high school, the first vote for the district of Wakefield, it was, I believe it was 127, although the paper said it was 104 and 6 against. And of course, I was one of the 6 against. And the reason why I was against, because I understood what was behind this being a butter, where they wanted to put the access road, which is now becoming a roadway, the trees that were coming down, the building that was going to be blasted. And the reason why, because when I sent the letter in 2021 to Jack McCarthy, a 7-page letter I sent to him, and I was disturbed about all this progress. And a month later, they changed the school. They moved it back 150 feet, and they said it was for environmental purposes. And instead of keeping the same 4 flights, they went up 1 flight. So they made it a 5-story building. So they did save some trees or some of the area, but with the new 650 foot slope ledge, they're going to cut out of the rock and stone and blast, which is going to be approximately 30 to 35 feet high at a 71-degree angle, catch the falling rock. It's all going to be catching water coming down. And they've talked about their stormwater drain, which is approximately going to be 12 feet wide to catch both of that. The problem is they don't tell you that that's the same road that's coming around the backside of the school, which is carrying students, letting off students, traffic that's coming back onto the parking lot, and bringing students home. So there's a lot of safety issues, but basically it's more environmental issues. And we wouldn't have that problem if they were building in the C2 site, which will accommodate all the SBA requirements as far as education and student, the amount of students of 1,600 as it was proposed. Sorry to ramble on, but thank you for allowing me the time to do that.
Thank you, Bob.
And if you want my email or phone number, let me know. I'll give it to you because this is recorded. That I can send you the information for all the stuff that I've said.
If you send an email to the ESC email inbox, that's most appropriate, both because those things are archived, so it'll be officially received by the committee. And also, I mean, you've all made your comments. I mentioned before, and just to be clear, not to be defensive, but like, we're primarily a group of volunteers. This meeting,
I understand.
So the subcommittees are mostly there to get work done, so that we're not trying to, so that we don't have 10-hour meetings in the.
No, I trust me. And I sympathize with the conservation committee, because I've been on their website for the past it'll be let me see, the past almost 2 years now since I was noticed with the NRAD notice notified. And instead of having all my abutters and neighbors on, I've been on the forefront of it. So
and we love seeing you twice a month, Bob.
I appreciate that.
And I do trust that I missed the meeting last night. I just didn't make it, but the Conservation Commission is looking into a number of these issues and within their jurisdiction. That's right, Judy, right?
Yes.
Yeah, no, they are. There's no question. I have no issues about the conservation committee. They're very thorough, very understanding, probably a lot more open than normal, but as I was mentioned before, it's better for the citizens of Wakefield to be involved with something as opposed to saying nothing. But unfortunately, we got a late start, and it wasn't until the NRAD notice it came about that I really got involved with it and found out how involved it really became. And, you know, going through, as I mentioned, 5,000 pieces of document of engineering stuff, which I knew nothing about, I became somewhat educated.
Thanks,
Thank-
Bob.
yeah.
I just, I believe I might have been cut off before. What I was trying to just say in terms of our role here, that mostly there's a work group meeting to get things done. But the one thing I consistently heard across the public comments today is a request that the committee be taking a stand on this. So I just sent a note, but requesting that the committee put this on the agenda. The larger group meeting would be where we would discuss whether to have a vote on a statement and what that statement might consist of.
Sure.
So that I have done and will do.
Okay,
In terms of the time, you know, in your time here, again, it's all useful and it is all recorded, but also, you know, like I said, we don't even, this group wouldn't even be in a position for the four of us to have a vote on agreeing with you, right? So, or making a public statement. So, but I did take that for an agenda item already, the larger group. And as I mentioned, when Paul finished his comments, that the comment shared before did lead to a larger discussion after the public comment part with, you know, so
Sure.
we
No,
have heard you.
no, I appreciate that, and you know, I thank you for your time and, you know, spent with this.
All good. I mean, it's partially by explanation, partially by way of apology that I realize it's not the most satisfying thing to come here, share your comments with us, and then we nod and say thank you.
Oh, no,
But that, you know, but
No.
it does make a difference, and it is heard, and it is
Yeah,
not just
well,
gonna
I think
stop
so.
with this
Yeah,
meeting.
I don't expect miracles. But you know, it's just you know, it's just again, share it, and the public should be aware of it. You know, when transparency is measured, it should be open, and you know, not to, I'll go on for half an hour and I shouldn't. So I apologize. I'll make my last statement. But I did send an article into the item, and I know the item doesn't have the greatest circulation, but I did talk about the transparency. And as far as a butter, it's seriously lacked. You know, they told me, well, we've been open and transparent. Only once in 2 years was I ever sent an email to a meeting. And then another time when Mr. Superintendent DeBerry talked about personally giving me an invitation to a meeting, he was, I hate to use the word delusional, but the first meeting he said was in November of 2018. And the neighbor who was lived next to me didn't even buy the house till 2021. So it couldn't have happened beforehand. And my other neighbor, who was on the finance committee for 9 years, actually had an email and looked at the date, and it said it was March of 21, which corresponds was right after I received the NRAD. So there's no way he's ever going to find a document with my name on it for attending a meeting that really never existed. Anyway, I'm done. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No
Thank
apologies
you.
necessary.
And we do need to move on from public engagement to get to other agenda items, but Paul, I do see every hand up. If just as a favor, if you can keep whatever you have to say.
Super fast question.
30 seconds,
I have the fast question. If I email this report from the American Chemical Society, I would like you to look, the whole team, to just review the first paragraph. I'm going to email it to the ESC. Is that the correct thing that will get to all members?
Yeah, and that's the only email inbox of record for us. I mean,
Okay.
If you have contact information for other individuals, you're also welcome to send it to them as individuals. But yes, definitely send it to ESC as well.
I'll be sending it tonight. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Good evening.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much. I applaud. I mean, this is an incredible amount of research. I've been paying attention, but not to the level of detail. So I really appreciate you all coming and sharing and educating me on some of the issues that I wasn't aware of.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, so no other public participants. We've heard from everyone, so I'm going to move on in our agenda the next item, which is just open space recreation plan process. And I'll make things fast here. Mostly there was one meeting, it was November now. Judy, you were there. I mean, it was a meeting to talk about the rest of the process. And I think primarily because the consultants are doing a lot of work behind the scenes, but I think also because the holidays, the committee, the ad hoc committee's role in this really doesn't start back again till February. So the meeting in November was to introduce material, give an overview of materials and outline the process that happens between February and June. I had my other notes here. Sorry, I wanted to pull them up and had them. Sorry, Judy, what's the name of the consultant group?
Horsley
Rhode Island.
Group.
Right. So, and that, and their role in the work that they do. So I can, if anybody here is interested, I can share more of the outline. But there's a public meeting February 1st, 2023. Our group can and should help promote that over social media and other things, and I'll bring that to Tiana. There's a survey that is open from February 6th to March 20th, and then a workshop, which I'm not sure how long that is, but I assume it's a longer meeting in early March 2023, and perhaps another community survey in April. And then the draft plans are meant to be, it says available early May. Seems very ambitious to me, given that there's so much happening up until a few weeks before then, but I'm sure that's part of what the consultants already.
Can I just clarify, is this, you said recreation plan? This is not just general open space?
This is the open space record. So this is the, Judy, do you want it? You can better explain the remit of what this process is, initiated this process.
Open space and recreation plan.
And record, so it's an and, okay,
Yeah.
that's what I missed.
So
Okay.
can you, I mean, I hear you, Sean, say we can help publicize the survey and the event that we want people to go to, but I'm wondering whether we should, thinking about sort of one of the feedbacks from the public comment was sort of, we wish we knew earlier. And admittedly, it's hard to get the focus of people in town right now. There's a lot going on in town right now. But I wonder whether it's worth, like, I'm not clear on what the open space and recreation plan is, what the question you're trying to answer. I don't know how it's different than master plan. But I do know that the master planning committee is also having some problems sort of like getting people to have sustained interest. And so I'm wondering whether it's worth even education up front to just broaden awareness that this is happening.
I think conservation has done a lot of outreach about the open space plan. We've talked about it for the last year and a half, 2 years. We've had presentations at meetings. I think it's always difficult to get public input. The last go around was the same thing. There's an initial wave of interest and then it kind of wanes. But I think that's why we're trying to stagger the open space rollout with the overall master plan. So we're staggering because they've had so many surveys and so many more workshops that I think we're going to be a much more condensed schedule.
So that there won't be
different
overlap
pieces
with
to that.
their, yeah,
What's that?
okay. So you're trying to stagger so that they do theirs, you do yours.
Right,
Okay.
right. So there's not overlap. Yeah.
Okay.
And Myra, I didn't know much about this before I agreed to be the ESC rep on it, and I only know a little bit more about it now. But if you go online, I can't share a link through chat because of our lockdown Zoom system. But if you go online and Google Wakefield Open Space and Recreation Plan, you'll see the last plan, which was for 2005 to 10.
Right. It's on
And-
the Conservation Commission's website. There's a
Yeah,
drop down.
it comes up easily in Google too. It's and it's 140 pages.
Mhm.
But I think the best way of seeing what the goal might be for this, granted from what Judy said, that is a more condensed process, but it's to update that document that, is 17 years old now. So I think that would be the big picture. I don't know if it'll have the same level of detail that some of these things has, but it includes things like a summary of an inventory of endangered species with habitat in Wakefield and some of the recreation and conservation, so there's some of these things that we've talked about in other settings. We want to help publicize the town's resources.
Right.
It's a nice cataloging of it that I wasn't aware of until I started preparing for this. So, I think again, one of the more for public education, but I think some of what we've been talking about and moving forward with that is how do we take these things out of reports and the process that goes into preparing things like reports and other things sometimes, which is amazingly exhaustive, and how do we translate that for day-to-day users who don't know there's a report and aren't going to read it if they did know, but there's information in there that should get out about resources in the town and other things. So, I mean, again, I'll be chiming with Tiana about this, just like taking stuff from this inventory. Did you know that these endangered species, had habitat in Wakefield as of 2005, and that there's a process that's looking at an update of that in terms of how we use open space and recreational lands, things like that. So I think that's an important part of what we can do, as well as just support the process that's in place here.
And I think the first, maybe the biggest part of it, the rollout, is presenting it to the permitting boards and asking that they reference, different requirements, try to mesh with their goals, the subdivision rules and regs, and how it all fits into the open space plan. They've always tried to do that with the master plan. They put together the master plan as a framework for the town, but then is it ever used? So if it's a living document that's referred to, and if it's consistent across the permitting boards, then I think it can gain some traction that way. More public awareness of its existence and interest in it. I just want to clarify the timeline for the open space. The first workshop for us is in March, not in February.
I
then
thought I said the workshop was in March, but there's a
the
public
workshop
meeting
is
in
in
February.
March. The survey is in April, and then the second workshop is in June. So they don't anticipate probably the conclusion of the open space plan until maybe October.
Great, thanks, Judy.
And just to kind of clarify, can I just, compared to the whole conversation we had with public, which in reality, that is private land up there on the vocational, right? Where this particular study is really looking at only land that we currently own. Is that a correct statement?
No, I don't think so. I don't.
Okay, so we can look at everything. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
In terms
It
of
would
that,
also include lands that might be available for recreation that are not necessarily town lands for whatever reason, but also if you look through the document, the types of things that are cataloged touch much more broadly, because they're saying, what's the impact of open space on all these other things? What are the environmental
I
challenges?
see. Okay. I need to go back. It's been a very long time since I read that. I have read it a while ago, so I will do that.
I need to read it more carefully, but from what I read, I learned a lot, because it really is a nice summary of not all environmental issues, but of a lot of environmental issues in town, because most environmental issues in town in some way intersect with open space or recreational land.
Yeah, I mean, I know I read all the reports that had to do environment when we set up the ESC as justification for setting up the ESC. So, and for this committee, frankly.
So
okay.
I have some more reading to do, because I want to read through the parts that I haven't read through yet more carefully, and also but yeah, I think where this will be a lot more lively is kind of spring into early summer, in terms of,
and the open space plan also fits into the MVP goals and that whole framework. So I think if it can be worked in there as well, I mean, there are a lot of different ways that it can be brought to light that I think it should be.
Okay. Yeah, we had a long conversation about trying to kind of reactivate the MVP at the last full meeting. So that's helpful.
Yeah, there's so much grant money out there under MVP. That's a huge component that once open space plan is updated, that we'd be able to tap into.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Sean, sorry.
No, that was all I had to say about that. The last thing I had to say is I got to go read the rest of this 142-page
I'm downloading
document
it right
from
now.
2005. But also I really do think that a lot of the other things we talked about, the sustainability committee, that this process is going to give us useful information, the things they're collecting along the way. Again, the consultants seem good, and I imagine they have the right tools for compiling and updating what we had before. So. All right, so just getting the last notes from that. Judy, do you want to report on our next agenda item, which a Conservation Steward Program update?
We discussed it last night at the Conservation Commission meeting, and I haven't heard back from Tom Mullen about whether a release or anything like that would be needed. But I think we can move forward if there are people who are interested, and I just have to figure out how we can advertise for people who are interested that can apply to the commission. And then we can start, if people have certain trails that they already frequent, then that could be their trail. We'll start trying to divvy up the trails. I would like to get it rolled out right away, get people interested at this point before the spring comes on. And the commission was open to that.
Great. That's wonderful, and that's great. And so I don't think you were at Judy, I don't think you were at the last ESC full meeting,
No.
but two things, and they'll come up. One, of course, just the public education part and wanting to promote the heck out of this once it's ready to go. But the other part was discussion of volunteers, and Dan Noren's been leading an effort to get volunteers, and kind of he was looking to say, where do we need volunteers and what are we advertising for? And so it's on his list that he'll help get volunteers for this. But from what you said in November, the last time this group met, it sounded like you at that time you were saying, hold off, I need to get Conservation Commission sign up on this first. It sounds like that's happened too. Yes. And so just he's waiting to recruit volunteers for that, but understood that then we'd be recruiting volunteers for this Conservation Commission runs super group. But that I think would be our role, is to promote it and help you get those bodies. And but he's also recruiting volunteers for other purposes, so hopefully a lot of those people would want to participate here. So
and I know a lot of people use the trails now, so hopefully it won't be too difficult to find people who are interested. And also I'd like to try to join up with the group that they have in Melrose. They have a trail steward program, especially with the trails that are adjacent to Melrose.
Okay, I thought had you not talked with him before, or you did talk with him? Okay, yeah, because that's what.
I have spoken about
what launched the steward program, setting it up in the way that you've been. Okay, yes. All right. Yeah, no, I think all that sounds absolutely wonderful. And let us know once it's a full thumbs up so that we can do our part on that. And also, I mean, just coming back to the last item, it dovetails nicely with an updating and cataloging of these things, because that OSRP from 2005 has has a list of what's available, and I think volunteers can be following. The timing's good that both are going on at the same time. It's a great time to bring volunteers, and that's all I'm saying clumsily. All right. Anything else on this?
Can I ask, I mean, as we think about volunteers, I mean, I know the Trail Steward program in Melrose is mostly adults who sign up to do sort of a particular trail. But I wonder whether we also want to think about students. And I know there's often students at the high school who need community service hours. I think the scouts are always looking, I mean, the scouts aren't necessarily a sustainable like trail maintenance team, but I think that there's potential there. Are there particular things that we'd have to think about if we try to recruit students different than adults?
I don't know. That would have to go through town council. I don't know if they would, I don't know how that would work. If it would have to be an age minimum. I'm not sure how that would work.
The
And
other
it-
Yeah,
thing,
we can
wanna
ask
look
town
at-
council and probably the superintendent too. I imagine there's just probably some different liability considerations.
Right, that's what my concern is.
the other thing with students, and I know, or my understanding, my kids are not in Wakefield schools. So, my understanding is that Wakefield doesn't have a district-wide service requirement, but other
Right.
towns do, and some people from kids from other towns might be very interested in getting their service hours count. All that needs is somebody to be able, who's in a position to be able to sign a form saying, yes, this person did their
Yeah.
volunteer time. And some of the private schools do as well, right? So,
I think down
another
the
reason to
road-
engage students is that there are students who are
Yeah.
looking, have to look for opportunities.
Right. And certainly there are always, once we start doing the kiosks, things like that, I can see the scouts being involved. But for me, it's more about consistency with the trail stewards. People that are going to commit to, once a month going out there. So people that regularly use the trails now. And I mean, we talked about a cleanup day, maybe the students could help with that. I've reached out to Catherine Dingra, she runs the Youth Action League. Youth Council, I don't know what it is, Youth Action League, I think it is.
Youth council.
Yeah, thank you. And she said they'd be interested in, maybe certain cleanup days, things like that here and there. I just don't know how the students would work consistency wise.
No, makes sense.
And how, there'd have to be some supervision, and I just don't know how that would work.
All this sounds great. I just think it's wonderful. I think of my own, and like, do I want to take a walk instead of other things? Sometimes the answer is often no, whereas, oh, I need to go and meet my commitment to help keep the trails. Like, I just think it hits so many notes, just the right amount of reinforcement to really get people to do what they want to do anyway, and we haven't provided an outlet for that. So I think it's wonderful, and calling it the Steward Corps just, makes a lot of sense. All right, anything else on this, or can we move on?
No.
All right, next item is review and updates on other 2022-23 goals and activities for subcommittee. I think we spent a lot of time talking about some of the big ones already, so I don't know if there were other ones that people wanted to make sure to talk about tonight.
Oh, I did want to mention, the Division of Fishery and Wildlife has released a new biomap that shows our environmental structure in Massachusetts. They updated it as of November 2022. So I think that is an interesting document. It's very small. We usually get.
Is it on are you putting it on the website, Judy?
I'm gonna have Jen put it on, hopefully tomorrow.
Okay,
It'll be linked. Yep.
that'd be great.
Making a note to also get that in our social media
Yeah.
to promote. All right. Anything else in terms of priorities beyond the ones we discussed? In the public comments, it is just a question. Julie, you probably know the answer, but in the public comments, it came up about the nature of public participation right now being over Zoom, maybe having led to some of the process and outcomes around the VOC and other things. And I was actually reflecting on this recently because I got the email saying, do you want to stand for another position on the committee, another term on the committee? And I've just been wondering, what is the latest on the open meetings law and how we've been interpreting it here that's forced us to be on Zoom? When I know at least in some of these group meetings, we'd rather not be.
I mean, Wakefield has made a decision to remain at least on a Zoom option. So I think we're trying to get to the point where there's a hybrid option, so people could meet in person, but that there would be, we would have 5 or 6 rooms around town where people could also Zoom in, because there's a real feeling that we like the recordings and that it gives people access who might not have access or the ability to actually come to the meeting. So I think the best we're going to get to, and I think there's going to be some things to work out, is a hybrid. Now, and we put some ARPA money aside to make sure that we have all of those rooms fitted out, because I think the state law ends in March, kind of allowing hybrid meetings. So that's what I know, but I will try to find some more information out on that.
Like I said, I raised it mostly for selfish issues because I was
Yeah.
thinking about it, but then it was reinforced when the comment came up earlier. But the reason why I think it's really relevant for these subcommittees is that when we're talking about the full committee or other processes, the extra work is real, but it's balanced in respect. And I feel like we've done the right thing across the committee to set up these subcommittees, but I feel like the structure, the signal to a requirement ratio isn't great, right? Like it just, these were meant to be small groups to roll up our sleeves. And it's not a dig on anything, and certainly not on public participation either, but because it does make it easier. But I think it also makes it harder to then say, well, we want to get these 3 things done. Let's meet twice between meetings to do this, right? So how we thread that needle of being a bit nimbler while still respecting how
Yeah,
open
and
space
maybe
law has
it's
been
something we need to
reinterpreted.
think about where maybe subcommittees don't kind of have the same level as full committees. I don't know. I've never talked to anybody about that, but I will try to get some more information because I think there's strong feelings on both sides.
It'd be my preference in terms of my personality, but I think the larger it's a barrier for like, okay, how do we get things done between the larger group meetings?
Right.
And then still have the reporting back to the larger group meetings to make sure that the transparency that the town requires and public and the public deserves is still being maintained, because I just feel like,
I mean, ironically, I think the lack of transparency on the Voc was that they never held Zoom meetings. And their meetings were not very well publicized and not very accessible.
So somebody can go back and watch 8 hours a month of ESC subcommittee meetings, and they can't find a recording of these other things. It's way out of whack. And I think we need more. Obviously, we need more on the latter. I would argue that if we could have less on the former.
But it is an interesting dynamic with the subcommittees. And, pre-COVID HRC, for example, Human Rights Commission, they would have little subcommittee meetings and they were always posted. So people could always go to them. But I think they were more of a roll up your sleeve kind of thing.
So, just on my mind.
Got it. I hope you'll consider another term. Hugely valuable.
Anything else on current goals and activities? I can't even remember right now if we have other goals and activities. I know we do, but
that's what I was going to ask. I mean, Sean, I think that the focus on where we are now and on the open space plan and sort of thinking about how to, the trails and is great. And I am wishing that I had in front of me the other goals that we were talking about. I mean, I think we were talking about, and I think it's going to be rolled as the open space plan around thinking about what other open spaces do we have that may not have trails, maybe ripe for what are the whole compendium of our resources in terms of, and by that I mean sort of town owned or things that we can access, and sort of can we get ahead of this sort of risks or opportunities a little bit. But I have a feeling that's in the open space plan process. And then I think the other thing we talked a little bit about, which I think maybe this was in the bigger committee, is as relates to MVP and how do we, I'm thinking about, I drive by every day that little pocket park by the Woodville, which is like very green and nice, and it's not clear why it is. But, we're really thinking about just bringing it all together. And I think that there's opportunity there too for when we get farther along, that we're using the space wisely.
I think that's part of what the Conservation Commission is envisioning by trying to get a hold of the tax title properties. We're still working through the title issues, but I think once some of those are hopefully transferred over to conservation, then they can be reimagined. I mean, there are a lot of great ideas that Rebecca has and that Bill Renault has in terms of regreening the bike path and re-envisioning that area. There's an outdoor art installation. That was one of the ideas, which was great. But I think more collaboration. I think it would be nice if conservation was included in the MVP conversation this go around, because they were left out of the whole realm of it last time. which when you look at what the mission is of MVP, it all relates to conservation. So, I mean, I'd
Yeah,
like.
I think the whole thing needs to be kind of re-kickstarted. It's unclear to
Right,
me
I
who's
agree.
even has ownership of it.
Yeah,
I have a note
Other
out to
towns
Joe
have
on
done-
this.
other towns have done amazing projects.
Amazing.
Money, yeah,
And I don't know whether it's not, I mean, I'm not sure it's public knowledge, but we became a green community like the week before Christmas. We got it. Finally.
Congratulations.
So, and it looks like we got a fair amount of grant funding with it. So I only say that because I'm kind of beginning to think now, you know, how we're going to manage MVP, how we're going to manage green communities and some of these other things. And, you know, I think they're all kind of interrelated. And you know, the land, I really hope we get a lot of this tax title land moved into conservation. And then we can, yeah.
another thing I wanted to mention is the MBTA overlay districts that I think Wakefield will have 2 of them. It's something I brought up to conservation last night because one will obviously be around the Greenwood train station. And that is an area that experiences a lot of flooding. There are some open areas, but it's something I'd like more collaboration with the planning board in terms of more awareness of the need for more trees. I mean, I understand we're kind of handcuffed with this regulation, but I think some forethought as to how to best protect and best vegetate some of these areas to try to come up with some thoughtful development, you know, that can be beneficial, but at the same time, not, you know, knocking down every tree to get there. And I think it can be done. I mean, I think it's possible, but it takes, you know,
Take some planning.
getting ahead of it.
Mhm.
That's a really good point. That's a really, really good point. We also have a new process going in for tree removal where all trees will have to be marked for removal. And there's going to be a process. So you can call the town hall if you saw a tree come down, or if you see that a tree is marked to come down and find out kind of what's happening. It's just going to be, it's what's been happening, but it's just going to be a little more open. But I agree with you, like Judy, like we should get ahead of that before the overlays really happen, because once the overlays happen, it's going to be I don't think it's going to be a huge whirlwind. I mean, it's going to be a change in zoning. It doesn't mean everything's going to change at once, but it would be really nice to get some of the trees in first.
I think there's going to be a big burst, especially in Greenwood. It's already started in Melrose. Especially blasting. That's a huge concern I have. There are a lot of rock faces around that area. There's a lot of wet area. The lower section of Greenwood Street is a floodplain. So it's critical to, I think, to get ahead of it and to have some, I mean, because planning board they have their regulations, they don't have the background necessarily. So I think having that partnership with conservation would help, you know, give them some more depth to their conversation, perhaps.
And this is where I think the MVP being introduced to conservation, introduced to planning, introduced to ZBA, like if everybody's looking at it through the lens of MVP, we might be able to, you know, you can't answer a question if you don't ask it, right? So you have no chance.
Right. And I think, but you know, maybe not for the most part, but I think for some of the part of the developers, they want something that is not just a lucrative product, but they want something that people will go by and look at it and say, wow, that really looks, you know, really fits in, it really looks nice. And there are certainly heritage builders is a good example. You know, they're very careful with the environment. So I think there are plenty that will try to work because it makes the permitting process easier for them. And that's kind of part of the goal that I have. You know, seeing that it's not obstructive to have more trees, it's going to give you a better marketable value for the property. And it's going to make the process smoother for you. So then the next time, you know, you kind of have a leg up because you're doing the right thing in front of the boards. So it kind of goes hand, it's beneficial for both sides. In my mind.
And I think we just approved $1 million for trees too, out of
Yes.
ARPA.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what the plan's gonna be for those, but hopefully we've got some flexibility.
I agree.
So Mira, to answer your question from a few minutes ago, the other priority that I think is still relevant, but maybe not the priority today, was we had talked about bringing in some outside extension resources or other things, just educating people about land use decisions they make on their own property and how that it can impact different things. So if we wanted to try to support or identify some community education opportunities around that and other things. So that was one of the things we had talked about as a priority for this year that we haven't talked about in a few months. So, all right, moving on. Next thing is to schedule our next meeting of this group. If we go with first Wednesday, that's because this meeting is late in the month and that is February 1st. That seems awfully soon. If we go with a week later, then it's the
That's
date.
master planning too. There's a master planning
Yeah.
workshop on February 1st.
Okay, and then if we go the following Wednesday, then that's the day before the full ESC meeting, and that seems like maybe people want something in their lives in the evening other than an ESC meeting. And then February will be a short month. So maybe we not meet early in the month, but meet late in the month and then get back on a monthly schedule after that. So we'd meet maybe late February and then first week of April again. I don't know that we need 2 more weeks.
Yeah, except if we want to do something with volunteers. I mean, we can do some of that offline.
And I think that's going to be Dan and or the public community. So I don't know that this group has to meet to do a whole lot on that. Just if Judy can send an email to us about when we have a thumbs up to start advertising it.
Yeah, because then they would get filtered through, because conservation would make the decisions on
Yeah.
the appointments.
So the 15th or the 22nd?
Ah,
22nd is school break week, if that influences anyone's life.
I'm gonna be in Maryland, but if it's on Zoom, I can be at either.
I don't know where I'll be, but I could do Zoom.
Okay, so do you prefer the 22nd?
But the 15th is also great.
15th splits the gap more evenly if we're kind of,
That's probably a little better for me, the
Yeah.
15th.
okay, so and then 7 o'clock is good again?
Mhm.
Sorry I was late.
All right. Not at all. All right, I will send you all a hold, and then of course the official invite will come from Sherry. All right, let me just get this in the meetings too. February 15th. All right, items not anticipated on the agenda.
I just wanted to ask if ESC could, I know they post when there's an upcoming conservation meeting about the vote. But if they can, I don't know how it would be worded, just the importance of public participation. Because there are not a lot of people that are taking part in this. And some of the stuff that's brought up is stuff that, you know, the commission doesn't think of, or a different angle on things, and it really is critical for the process. Whether, I mean, the applicants don't like it, but.
Yeah, so we've had some discussion around, so like you can't use this town social media to like summarize a position, and since when we're doing that, so but what I think we can do is state facts. So and so I think saying something like, did you know that many people in town have not been happy with what's happening at the vote, ? Find out more about why. I think that's maybe staying on the
Or
right
even
side of
as
the line.
simple as Conservation Commission meeting this week and some of the things that are on the agenda.
But when we say that, then that doesn't get, because if people aren't thinking about the vote, then that's not enough
Oh.
of a whistle to this. So I think we can allude to controversy. We can't take a position on controversy.
Right.
But if that's just trying to find a way to engage with Judy's recommendation of people need to know it's important. Other than just vaguely saying this is important.
Right.
Can we say a little bit more without it turning into, you know?
I mean, more, even just keep it general, the importance of public participation. I mean, right now, there are more people from outside Wakefield that are commenting on this and the public meetings than there are in Wakefield. That's disturbing to me.
Do you have a timetable for when you have to make a decision?
They want it quick. I mean, conservation just got it maybe 2 months ago. And
Right.
they would be happy to close at the next meeting.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's turned contentious and it's completely unnecessary. They have outstanding engineers that are designing the stormwater plans, and so I have every confidence in them. I mean, that's one huge advantage, that they have very thorough, thoughtful, they'll go over the plans, you know, feed it into the ground until every question is answered. But that isn't true across the board with the applicants. They're not fans of public participation.
All right, so I will add that to what we
I mean,
discussed as well.
even if it's, you know, you may have thought of something that the commission didn't. It might be, you know, it can be an email, you know, if they can't come to a meeting. And not an email to the applicant's website, an email to the Conservation Commission. Because last night they asked for all the questions to be given to them ahead of time in writing, which is fine. You know, they want to have some answers for the meeting, but I made the point, it's a public meeting. People are
Yeah,
entitled.
I don't like discouraging in-person public
Not
meetings
at
in
all.
real time.
Not at all.
I think every single committee should have to do exactly what we're, you know, what we're all doing. It's important. People have different perspectives.
And that's when the conspiracies start flying. They're trying to shut out the public. And certainly, if it's the same question over and over, then that's going to be shut down. I mean, that's reasonable.
Yeah.
But people, as long as it's within the purview, you should be able to ask as many questions as you like. If it takes an extra meeting, then that's the way it goes. I mean, we've had 3-lot subdivisions that have had longer discussion periods than they're looking for.
Hmm.
And there's a reason for that.
Yep.
But there just isn't, I mean, it's not unique to this project. There's just not a sense of urgency in this town when it comes to these issues.
All right, so, and what date's that Conservation Commission meeting?
The 17th. The third Tuesday. We meet the
January
first and third.
17th.
Yes, the first and third Tuesday, yeah.
Okay, I'm putting it in my notes for when I'm meeting with Tiana, so that we can get in the queue of things to share. All right. On a related note, just I did send the email after our public participation about just putting this on the agenda for the ESC, the discussion of the vocational. Do we need to actually have some draft language for discussion before next week's meeting? Or do you think that on the fly we can come up with some wording that would be appropriate if we're actually talking
I think
about
it makes things
voting on a
easier
position?
if we have some language. And, you know, and it could be something like ESC, you know, encourages, you know, I don't know. I mean, Bronwyn had some interesting ideas. I don't think it needs to be super detailed, but I'm not honestly sure who we even send it to, though. Maybe MSBA and Senator Lewis's office.
if others agree, if we were to take a position statement and agree
Yeah.
to it, right, then like, I
Yeah.
mean, you know, that's what was requested of us by public or suggested by public participants, so we can see if others agree. But I think the fact that we haven't done that in the 2 years I've been involved, like, that's also meaning something. Like, we're not sitting there opining about every environmental issue in town all the time. But this one is that, and then it could be that that these issues need to be looked at holistically by the town, that there are concerns about both the process and the impacts, that and that the town council needs to be looking at environmental issues, and that and the town, and then we send it to everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, again,
Which I think
don't
is
know
what we
impact
talked about
it
doing
has.
for the Wakefield High School as well. Because that vote's gonna come up on the 28th, and I think we're gonna have a discussion as to what our position is on that. And my thinking is that we kind of stick to the environmental facts, right? Like, and we spent a lot more time, because I think there's been more focus on it from the very beginning with the high school. Like, we've been involved kind of all the way along, talking with them about sustainability. So I think we can make a statement on where we feel like the high school is sustainably.
And there's been a
But
lot more information about the high
There's been a
school.
lot more information available.
Yeah, I mean, we did vote and make a, send a statement to the vote on the sustainability components of the building itself. We haven't done it on the site, but we did, I think we do have and for that, I think Dan wrote something and we sort of approved it, but I think we could do something, to your point, Julie, like something more conceptual, that we could sort of, if we all agree that we want to do something on the broader environmental impacts of the site choice and the process of the site, I don't know.
Yeah.
Ratify,
And it could be as simple as,
whatever the word is.
we encourage, I don't know whether it's reconsideration, but all things equal, we would really like to minimize environmental damage. And encourage you to look at that again, or something like that.
Yeah, and also I think the water, the drainage is sort of, that was something that was new to me, is sort of the containment and the sort of long-standing impact on the water, and the sort of risk there, the drainage. And I imagine, Judy, you all are all over that. But I feel like that kind of lingering pollutant component, even though it is on private land, that's where, to me, it feels like, I don't know, this isn't my area of expertise, but I feel like that's a real risk to our larger community outside of land that we don't control.
So
We don't control it, but we're asked to fund it.
That's what makes this private land a little unique.
Yeah, so I don't really
I agree.
consider it a private project at all. They can say that, but no.
I mean, and Sean, maybe it's something like, maybe we should look back at Dan's letter, like, we have weighed in on the environmental kind of the building, and I'm very happy that they're going electric, right? We were not aware at the time of some of the siting issues, and add a statement on that.
great. So what is the homework that we need to do before our Thursday meeting of the larger group, if any, to?
Well, look at this, look at the information that the public has sent us, I think. And, maybe the three of us just kind of, I know we can't do it outside of this, but if we each kind of in our head, kind of reflecting on what we heard here, come up with 1 or 2 lines, then we can throw them out and maybe come up with something with the whole group.
Yeah.
We need to warn it, Melissa, it's going to be a heavy meeting between the 2 schools.
And in the biomap, there'll be information on the core habitat in this area. And
Okay.
there's also a link to the ACEC on the conservation website.
Yeah, and Sean, another thing, we haven't talked about the energy park, and I don't know where that stands on Conservation Commission, but I feel very strongly that energy park needs to move forward. And I know there's some concerns about it, but it will be very, yeah.
It's
It-
another one of those things that, why can't this be brought up from the start? It's brought up at the last minute, hurry up, we need this, it's the best thing, just sign here, and we know what we're doing.
Right, right,
they had
which is
been
not, it's not a good
proactive-
way to get things done.
They knew they wanted this, and they did not come to conservation until they thought it was a done deal. That's not the way to do it, and it's not the process. And that's what erodes public confidence in any of this.
But they said at town meeting that they were gonna go to conservation and they would take the recommendations at
Yeah,
conservation.
no, but they didn't. They went to town meeting, got the approval, and so they did it backwards.
Yeah, well, we need, I mean, I don't know. I know that there's some timing issues there. And I hope that we can find a compromise, because I think it would be really devastating to lose this energy park. So, but again, we can talk about that. Obviously, that's my opinion. I would not, we can talk about it with the ESC. But the Conservation Commission deserves the full, the right to completely evaluate it.
And it's chapter 90, article 97 land, so that's the other consideration. It's not
Right.
just, it's the state, it's not just conservation.
Right.
All right. Any other matters arising or?
Nope.
All righty, so we can wrap things up, and I will follow up with getting out a invite for our February meeting. So I guess we're done then. I'll finish my notes later. All right, have a great evening, everyone.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.